Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's meetup. Today, we are joined by David Goldsmith. David is an entrepreneur, consultant, advisor, and author of the best-selling book, Paid to Think, a leader's toolkit for redefining your future. He is also a longtime friend and a colleague of Jay's. So the two of them are going to be leading today's discussion. A few weeks ago, we discussed the importance of recognizing the human in the loop when it comes to AI adoption specifically. And today we are going to be continuing the discussion and exploring topics along those lines. So together, David and Jay will be drawing on their experience, their knowledge, past projects and current projects to unpack some of the systems that are reshaping our future. They're going to unpack human connection and discuss how AI fits into it all. The session is being recorded and the recording is available on our YouTube. We enjoy participation, so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. To lead into the topic, I want to introduce a project that David is working on at the moment, which is called Project Moonhut. There is a video explaining it, and I will drop the link in the chat for anyone who wants to watch it after the session. He discusses the topic of interconnectedness and its importance. Here at Ecosystem AI, we spend a lot of time unpacking and talking about how organizations interact and connect with their customers or consumers, specifically at scale. So to lead into the topic, I'm going to turn to Jay and David, and maybe Jay can kick it off, and if he can please share some kind of context and insights into human connection.
Thanks, Maddie. I think the topic is an age-old discussion around where and how humans derive benefit from other people around where they find themselves. So either in hyperlocal and eventually in the virtual world, and where we are going into the age of some kind of intelligence assisting us to achieve outcomes. I think that from when David and I met at some event, we were planning to think about how the world of work is evolving in Silicon Valley, with Esther Wachiki and a couple of people core to the conversations around the concept of work. That means, how do you take certain inputs, go through a transformational process into some kind of output, and you want to achieve more in your output than what you use in your input? Initially, from a debate point of view, played out in saying how much of what you do should be exploitative, explorative, how much of what you do should mine, use, consume as much as you can for purely the purposes of economic benefit, and how much of what you do should be contributory to people around you and to other communities and to the society at large. And the whole concept around the innovation for jobs, it's what the community was called at the time, our debate then kind of circled out in saying that humans, in the context of its biological system, need certain kind of capabilities. They've got certain needs. They want to get to certain outcomes. And maybe what we should do is get into how we engage with space. David was already involved with some community, and we did some work with a space portal and NASA and a few kind of, David had this big vision around the role of the human is evolving in a certain direction. My role was, is there a way that I can make sense of this? How do you understand the connectionist view to make sense of a certain context? So our kind of early days of conversation, kind of was quite big, but it became amorphous into how we reasoned about the impact of people and how you can benefit to a community. And we then, spent separate paths for a couple of years, do our own thing. And, we stay connected all the time and trying to share ideas. And I'm still involved in the Moonhut project. For me personally, there's always a part of you that wants to think about how you assist and help other people. It's a part of you that say, well, I need financial means to do that. So there's this complex interplay between the economics and the benefit that you're going to get, from doing certain actions. And I think that's what always intrigued me about how the Moonhut community can play out, making sure we've got wellness beyond just our current existence. And for us, to make it super practical, is to say, what can we do? What new solutions, what new algorithms are needed for us to not show that our technological product capabilities and so on are purely exploitative? How do you contribute to somebody's longer path of success? So David, I think, maybe that's part of the story.
Well, I appreciate the memory, because I had forgotten about that experience. We were at this event, and before you know it, Jay and I were on a whiteboard on the side just mapping out the future. And if you know Jay, we were rocking and ended up forming a company together. We worked together for some time, and I've been to South Africa plenty of times to work with him. Jay is helping us in one area specifically because he's brilliant in the capability of understanding dynamics that I don't think many people in the world are capable of understanding. One of the conversations that I've had with myself and with others is to try to explain how the future can unfold. There's often a reductive, negative approach that people are using. We have to go back to the old ways. Well, we don't go back to old ways. That doesn't happen. We don't become younger. We can't turn the clock back. So how can you talk about that? And the world the reductionism has never worked throughout society. It just has not. But something has happened recently that has been kind of interesting. And to simplify it, I came up with this model of understanding, and hopefully you'll get it. We have several different layers of how humanity has worked throughout history. There's the solo, the individual who goes out, does their own thing. But we often talk about that interconnectedness that we have. Interconnectedness is what we have right now. I just met Mark. I just met Lindy. We are connected today. There's an interconnectedness between us. But the world has actually evolved and our lives evolved into much higher levels. There's the next level, which is entangled. The best way to think of entangled is a woman's braided hair. We're not completely connected with that individual, but our lives overlap with one another. The community around you is entangled. Doesn't mean you know everybody. It doesn't mean you're connected to them, but we have an entanglement. But if you take it to a higher level, we're infused with one another. And our lives, whether we like it or not, or think about it in this way, I am touching Ryan, I am touching Rob, because the molecules between us are connected to one another. If you need an analogy, it's a fish tank. Everything you do in a fish tank is connected. I had a saltwater aquarium when I grew up, and oh my God, one pH level off, one something off, and the whole thing could die. You had to keep it balanced. In order for humanity, in my belief, to make that next generational change, we should be moving to what has been labeled Syntara, Syntara, which is the architecture underneath how we live, work, and play. It is the systems, the structure, the governance models, all of that. That we spend a lot of time thinking about. How do we set up our governance models? How do we work together? But there's a side that humanity has lost over the past 100 years, 150 years, because of the evolution, and that is Sentara. Sentara. So Syntara and Sen. Sen is the humanistic side, the human side, the things that make us who we are. And we discount them, but it happens all the time. I can imagine every one of you has had someone walk into a room and you've said, "What's wrong?" And your spouse, your friend, your neighbor said, "Nothing's wrong." And you say, no, tell me what's wrong. How did you know in that heartbeat that something was wrong? You've walked down an alley and said, there's something off here. You have had experiences where you meet somebody like I met Jay and things just went together. There was nothing there besides energy. We don't focus on that at all. And we have to bring back the humanistic side of humanity to create that change. I go to an event. I was living in Hong Kong for over a decade. I go to an event in the States and I meet this guy. His name's Dave. We become great friends. 8 months later, he gives me a call. "Is this your mother's name?" I say, "Yes, that's my mother's name." I hear in the background in a very Eastern European accent, "Is his father's name?" I go, "Yes, that's my father's name. You won't believe this. Your mom and my mom went to elementary school. My mom was at your house 3 weeks ago." Now, my mom is in her 80s, and that connection happened for some reason, but we lose that connectedness to the people in our neighborhoods and our society. Project Moon Hut, to tie it in, we're not trying to be reductive. How do we bring that sense of a new future for our children and our children's children? How do we bring that over a 40-year plan? We do have a full 40-year plan, giving him the compliment that he deserves. He sees that interconnectedness. He sees that infusion. I think with people like you helping us, we can create unbelievable, massive change. So that's a small piece of what we're working on.
It's very helpful. And I think that the thing about networks that always intrigued me was that when you grow up in some societies, you sometimes feel that you are different. Or you're in a situation where you feel that I don't look like you. But there was a time when it was difficult for people to solve similar relationships, to find ways they can connect. And what really intrigued me was Peter Senge and people like that around the early days of organizational learning and societal learning. The outcome of a period of time around the strength of weak ties and graph theory was to say, well, if everything is interconnected, is there a way to model it? And I think that sometimes we get kind of stuck in the theoretical frameworks of this, I can connect anything to anything and I can make it into some kind of mathematical model, but you still need a philosophical frame. If you don't have the philosophical frame, then you don't know what you're pursuing. And that's why I've always liked explaining to people the difference between the social graph, the knowledge graph, the economic graph, because each one of those have got a different purpose. Because meta is built around the social graph. That means human-to-human connections with evidence of that network evolving over time. LinkedIn is the company, the job site that connects everything. It became a news feed, but it's the connectedness of few. And the knowledge graph is hyperdimensional, even with all of this capability and all of this that has been deployed over the last many years. How do you find that one person that you can connect to if you feel you don't fit somewhere? And I think, David, that's, I see you smiling on it, because we've been agonizing over this for the longest time. And it doesn't matter if what you're searching for is an investor, a technologist, a client, whatever it might be. And it's almost like a modern view of Tinder or some kind of web where you have a matchmaking capability specific to a certain domain. Even though we have all these technological platforms doing what they do, we've got AI helping us, it's still something that seems to be amorphous.
The fundamental component of each one tends to be an economic model that drives, if we get these people together, what will happen. And we all know when you go to LinkedIn, you're the one who interprets all the data, figures out who you see, and you put it together. Then you go to Crunchbase and you say, how does this company build? Then you look at Facebook and see their model. Then you look at the next one. Then you look at a YouTube video and you say, now I understand this person. The challenge is we've dissected everything into a case where it's an economic model. I've worked in over 50 countries around the world. And when I go to look for something, I'm going to get a US-centric modeling of the people around me. And yet I want to know what that person in Japan is doing. I want to know what that person is doing in Estonia or South Africa. I want to know that. Our systems are designed for the economic exchange, not for the connective tissue, because I can guarantee you if we went through this group here and we took away the pictures and we said, how many of you like food? You'd say, I'm a foodie. Well, we don't see that. How many of you like to dance? Well, it doesn't show that. How many of you love to spend time sitting with a friend for hours and just discussing philosophy? So we're getting a very surface level that bring people together for an economic value. And Jay's big on the economic side. I am not as much, even though I've had to for my life. It's the challenge, Jay, that I'm struggling with. And that's what our software we're building is how do we help a software application actually bring together the right people no matter where they are in the world? We're only looking at it from their CV, but I want to know more. I taught at NYU for 12 years. The first class, I brought 18, there were 18 students, and I wanted to know who they were because they don't know each other. They never had this experience. We went around the room, 5 things about yourself, mentioned where they're from, what they're doing, what's involved, and one thing people didn't know about them that they would like to share. These people didn't know anybody. In New York, you're really separated. You're not connected. You go into your little holes and you come back to school. 18 students from 17 countries. Oh my God, 18 students from 17 countries. And then on top of it, we went to lunch together. And because they shared, I like to play the piano. I like to this, I like to that. You just saw the aggregation that wouldn't have come economically if you tried your hardest. They've been to each other's weddings. Actually, this morning, I was texting one of those students. It's amazing, but we've lost the side that gives us dimensionality.
Isn't it some of the debates that we've had over time that technological inventions assist us? If I'm a more introverted person, I can disconnect physically while still being connected. But if I'm a person that likes to be connected, I can use the tooling to get me connected. But like you say, the economic models are designed to maximize profit and monetizing relationships. The role of trust has been under pressure because of this. Because if I want to trust a certain situation, it means that I first have to trust the parties who are part of that situation. And how can I get to know if I can trust that party if it's only about the mechanics? You know, we match make, you know, the 5 things that you know and the 5 things that I know, we put those together and boom, this is supposed to be a perfect match. But in the real world, the philosophy as to how you think it must play out and how it gets achieved and the things that motivate you and drive you, they're not recorded. It's almost like it gets isolated from everything else that you do. And isn't that what you're talking about? But how do you then record and how do you collect that evidence? Yes, in computational social science, you kind of taught that you don't need to speak to a human. And as a fact, the moment you speak to a human, you've missed your research target. Why? Because you might be emotionally and otherwise influenced, where if in computational science, I look at the evidence of the data points that you've left behind as the only part that explains to me who you are, I can make it more accurate, more precise. The question then is, when I'm in the morning, on my way to a coffee shop, and let's say I go for a run and I drink a cortado, dark roast or light roast, whatever it might be, I don't jump onto my social media to say that I've just been for a run, I've just had a coffee, I just drink milk, I do that. So that means there's a part of your existence that is disconnected.
I actually wanted to know what coffee you got this morning, and I don't know why you didn't post it, because it would have been nice to see it in a cup on the table in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah. What if Jackie's, she's like busy with coffee, make some cups for us, and it's like
on the AI side, there's over 300 disciplines under AI. Most of you know that. There's a complexity that everybody kind of tosses into one bucket. In years to come, we won't even talk AI. We won't even mention it because it's just a tool and a mechanism. Like, we don't talk about things that happened 50 years ago. The challenge becomes, is society ready to start asking a whole new set of questions? And today in the world, we have more conflicts than we've had in all recorded history. We have species disappearing. Jay was sharing the last time that you don't see the amount of one type of species, the same amount. I forgot what it was, a lion or a tiger or something, or cheetah. We don't see them as often. We're seeing a world that's fractured, but the people have their head down. So the question becomes, how do you use AI? Again, I'm using that in a very loose term. How do you use technology that exists today to bring individuals together? And you have to change the systems and structure. And you also have to paradigm shift people. Here's a saying: people often believe that you can change somebody. So I ask this question: if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife, have you changed them? And they say, what do you mean? There's always two answers out of this. Have you changed the person you're with? And I could see Graham shaking his head. So there's two answers. One is no. We all know I've been with my wife for 39 years. I have not changed her. The other one is yes. And it follows up with, I'm on my second wife. I'm on my third wife. It's never in the middle, because you don't change the person with you. You change the experiences around you. And that's a big difference. People change by experiences they have. So how do we make the experience of being engaged, not so you're looking down, but that you're looking up too? Because we're not going to disconnect. It's just a reality. In the next 40 years, we're not going to disconnect from our devices. We're here trying to connect. So we're not going to get rid of that. If you take that as a reality check, and without being obtrusive, algorithms can look at how my head moves, where my eye moves, what language I use, what countries I talk about, how interested I am. Do I pause? Do I not? It could pick up our typing. Do we touch type? Do we single type because of spacing and time lengths? If we can use them accordingly, humans are not very good at being kind to one another, because today's society is about building economic value and getting clicks and likes. But if we could find a tribe of individuals around the world who ask the questions differently, it's not, I have a saying in front of me: the smartest person in the room is the person who asks the best questions of themselves and of others. That's the smartest person in the room. It's not the person who's answering. It's the one who asks the question. And if you've ever been in a meeting for an hour and asked one question and the whole thing disbands, it's because you asked the smartest question in the room. So
Graham
we have
Graham always they always got tough questions.
Yeah, but that's not what you said about him yesterday. You just said, I hope he doesn't show. Oh, wait, sorry. Did I say that? The question becomes and that's part of, we're building a software application on this, is how do we get society and individuals to change the questions they're asking of themselves, such as, what is our real desired outcome from this interaction? When I go to LinkedIn, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get followers. I'm trying to get my number up. I need my fix because I can see how many people watched my post. I want to make sure I get some return on it. I don't research people before I meet them, ever. I want to meet them first. I don't read their bio. I don't want to know their background.
Remember, it's a fresh mind hypothesis.
Someone actually wrote about this. It's, how do we get society to ask different questions? And that fundamentally is the tool of AI. if we can get society to say, why did you ask that? What are you trying to accomplish here? It doesn't have to be something that everybody sees. For example, I might ask a question to Jay and it pops up and it says, David, you're an idiot. Just ask him why he always wears black. And he will tell you, because he has a whole philosophy behind this. If I know that he likes X or loathes Y, or his mother grew up in the same town as yours, that changes everything. How do we make those tools become more responsive? How do we change society one question at a time that makes us redefine what our future will be like? And that's a tough one.
On that note of questions, Graham, please go ahead. You're on mute. Sorry.
Thanks.
Okay.
It was actually a bit of a comment on what Jay was saying about computational dynamics and so on. And you were saying that you want to be able to compute accurate decisions based on the data points. And my comment is this, that people don't make decisions logically. They make decisions on emotion in the first place. So if you want to predict decisions, you've got to take into account emotion. You can't discount it. You have to include it. And the example I like to use is the logical mind says, I want to buy a house. So you make a list of all the things the house must have, so many bedrooms and this size kitchen and fitted cupboards and all the rest of it. And then you go and look at houses. Which house do you buy? Not the one that meets all your checkpoints. You buy the one that you walk in and you think, oh, I like the light in this room and the coffee smells good. I could live here. Yeah. And it's a completely emotional thing.
Yes.
When we actually reach a decision. So if you want to predict or influence decisions, the fundamental is emotion. The facts we justify afterwards.
No,
The
definitely.
sen-
That's why computational social science exists and why you don't have mathematical reasoning only. And I think that is the crisis with a lot of the thinking that plays out about how you interpret what a person has done. If I had to give you a quick mental test, and let's think of the concept of the rate of learning about a person. The great thing about humans, they are predictably irrational. And that's what makes it so amazing. As you go through your biological cycle on your way to your end, you go through very discrete cycles of behaviors that are incredibly predictable. Let me give you the ultimate test, and we don't have to give the answer, but just do the test yourself mentally. How many times have you put in fuel in the last month on your way to a restaurant? How many times did you make a phone call while you were at the fuel station? How many times did you pay a bill while you're busy doing a search about something else? How many times have you booked an airline ticket while you were busy eating or just buying food? Or how many times have you done anything? And when you play that back in your own mind, you have no memory of it. Humans don't memorize things that actually describe behaviors. And that's what makes computational social science so fundamentally important to understand. As soon as you sit back and make a deliberate attempt to document your life, how many times you've done things that have left digital evidence, you will be absolutely shocked how predictable you are. And I think that is the thing that makes it so fascinating. That's why I've always liked the behavioral sciences, like computational anthropology. That is an enormous field in the context of another meta guys who have done work in computational anthropology. The understanding of a certain story will affect an entire society. And another friend of mine, also David, he's been working on the community that I've done a lot of work on the graph of how ideas travel through a society. And the problem is you don't remember where you got a word from. You don't remember where you got the idea from. You don't remember the last time you spoke to somebody about it. You can't remember the last emails that you sent. You can't remember exactly the conversation you had with a colleague yesterday. That means humans by default become biologically programmed by the society that they're in to go down an incredibly narrow tunnel of existence. And you're often the product of your environment. So that means that if you know you can only do certain things and that you have to drive an hour to get your coffee and you have to pay for it, you might want to do it at home, your behavior gets shifted because of your access to your surroundings. And I think that was the debate that I think David also raised earlier. And that's what we wanted to make sure we understand about humans living elsewhere. What is elsewhere? I mean, how did I get to Cape Town? You know my story. It was sunsets. We moved here. We've never, I've ever been to in my life. I used to come see you in Cape Town and Pinelands when I used to visit in the city. And then one day we searched in California, say, oh, check, there's a place in Cape Town. It's got amazing sunsets. Let's go there. That was the decision. How do you model that? Because I am predictably unpredictable. So the people would have known wherever he goes next, it's probably going to be a crazy place where you're not going to know how he got there. But there are other people who would never do that, who would make a decision on the school, on the time of day, the place where they go. And that is why archetypal research and the like has been an enormous focus for us. We've done a lot of work trying to make sense of how those fit together. So yes, Graham, absolutely.
So the question begs, does having that much information allow humans to be human? Like the fact that I would travel on a plane, living in Hong Kong, I had at least 3 16-hour flights per month. I come back, sit down at the table, my sons would say, what movie you watch? I watched 4 movies. I don't know the name. It was the one with the blonde. It was the one with the blonde, and they did that thing in the desert, and he'd be like, oh my God, you spent 2 hours watching this movie. Well, the movie was just entertainment to me.
Yeah.
It is the overload that we have, way too much, probably because of trauma. The challenge becomes, how do we create a society that is more human and not predicated on giving me the return that I don't need? I didn't need that before. I didn't need it 50 years ago to connect with somebody. I meet Nicola. She heard about me from Jay, everything negative. And then she meets me and says, Jay's always wrong. I mean, he's a nice guy. But whatever happens, we don't need that memory. And our world is designed for you to say, wait, I saw a post. Let me share with you that post. You didn't need that post in your life in the first place. And now you shared it with 50 people. And why did you do that? Because I'm a junkie. Because I need that hit. Well, why do you need that hit? My mommy doesn't love me. I mean, it always comes down to mother issues.
Isn't it that? But it's like Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Is it the pure fact that you're observing a society means that you're altering its state because it's being observed? Mm-hmm. And we grapple with that all the time. But the reality is, you forget about the contracts you've signed daily. The moment you click on that button, search, or I feel lucky in Google, you've signed the contract around the bit of information you shared at that time, at that place, for that act you're performing. You have shared a bit of data, a bit about your soul, about the things that are important to you. The moment you participate, the moment you pay for that coffee, the moment you went anywhere, your entire life is being recorded, and you now got to a point where you are numb to it.
Well,
and that's why the debate
goes back to the question that I had yesterday. I said, how do we get to a place that those things become a positive net gain? The reason I love Jay is Jay has got a huge heart. With everything he does in the computational side, with all the quotes that he can pull from every paper in the world, his heart is there. And the question that I challenge us as a group, as individuals, is how do we, over the next 40 years, reshape that? Because all this call will be somehow recorded. We're here. I mean, I've got it on my Outlook calendar. I'm going to
analyze your body language and say that did David twitch twice, or did he look up once or twice?
So the question, going back to the fundamental part of what we were looking at here, is what do we do, as this is an AI call, how do we leverage the tools around us? It starts with asking the right question. If we don't ask the right question, we come from the wrong place. Let me give you a quick example. Husband and wife say, we're not getting along well. What I want to do is I want to go on holiday. And just mind you, I use the word holiday because it's an international call. Husband and wife say they want to go away 2 weeks because they need to bring their love back together. So they put everything together and go on this holiday. That's one option. The other one, the husband and wife sit down and say, what do we want? What's our real desired outcome? Well, we want to have intimacy and closeness, so we tend to have lost. What's getting in the way of that? Well, your mom's sick and we really have to take care of her, and the house is a mess. The outside, the gardening, everything has to be done. Why don't we spend 3 days together taking care of the house, cleaning it up, making sure that everything, because when we come back, if on the other one, it's all going to be there. Why don't we spend 4 days, visit your mom, take care of those contracts, and make sure she's okay? Instead of spending all that money, why don't we drive 3 hours to that cabin, spend time together, and get to know one another? We come back on trip 2. You tell me which one is going to end up having a more loving relationship. It's not complicated, but we start with strategy.
But isn't that with that personality challenge? Isn't that the way that a person eventually conducts themselves? Because some people might find it very difficult to do that. It's like Jackie and I always had a joke with each other. We've never missed a decent disagreement. And what it means is that hopefully we've agreed from when we met that she is who she is and I am who I am. And we're on this journey together, and we basically said we're going to figure shit out as we go. That was our agreement when we met. So that means that you need that kind of person willing to have a decent disagreement with you and not hate you forever for it. And I think that makes it tough.
It was my wife and I was in Hong Kong, and I called my wife one day. I said, I've been telling people we've had 13 fights since we've been together. And she went, oh, no. And I thought, we're going to have a fight. She said, I don't think we can name on one hand the number of fights we've had. We've been together 39 years. And so the other day I said, I've been telling people we've had 6. And she said,
but what's the fight?
We might disagree about something, but we've never yelled, screamed. We've never gotten upset. We've never walked out of a room.
That means that a disagreement means, and that's what I think, if you think of the humanistic story, and I think this is the interesting thing about why I've always liked, as I've got into the computational social science world, because there was a time when I believed that the human is just something you can model and framework in your method. Imagine my surprise in the 90s when there was this human, it was, what the hell is going on with this thing? It never does what it says. It's opposite of what it's doing. It confuses everybody. It lies about everything. It's a completely different world. And that means that if you can figure out, and especially if you think about an intelligence, a human intelligence with its biologic and genetic capabilities can easily assess somebody's body language. Like David, you and I laugh about stuff all the time. So we can joke at each other. And if other people were more sensitive, they might be insulted by some of the things we say. Somebody will get hurt because something that you said, and because they don't understand initially the intent. Humans can naturally contextualize a situation based on our intelligence. And that is the crisis with the embodiment or the anti-embodiment of intelligence in tooling, trying to behave like humans, because the only way you can behave like a human if it's got a manifestation into, let's say, a commercial product. If you think about toothpaste, when you go to your local retail outlet and want to get out of the house, that's the only reason why you go. Otherwise, you would have bought it online. Because why would anybody want to go to a retail outlet? You want to have an experience, look at the options, and then decide which one you're going to pick. Why would you pick one over the other? Because you have an affiliation with a brand, and you have already been programmed as a consumer to believe that Colgate is the right product. When you then pick it up and go, well, hang on, this thing has got a blue stripe in it, and I want a green stripe. Who do you phone? Who do you complain to? You don't know anybody. You don't even know who put the shelf. You don't know who owns it. You don't know where everything. You've got no concept of where and how it originated. And I think that humans, over time, from the 70s, when segmentation kind of started, 76 onwards, if you think about when the earliest view of segmentation and then linguistics around segmentation kind of got built out of, we now in a world, we say, well, I want them to know me, these buggers. I want them to understand exactly. I want that toothpaste to ask me a few questions and then produce something just for me. I want my shoes to be customized, my clothes, my experience. And that's when things get tough. Because now, what and where are the edges of my personality of what I will allow somebody to make, create, engage with me?
It's a lot easier. You just haven't figured this out. Green or the blue don't make
Send somebody else to buy the toothpaste, is what you're saying.
Right. My wife buys it, gives me what I need, and that's what I have. And I don't even know if it's blue, green, yellow, or purple, or that there's a little bit of cyanide in there. I don't know. So, Nicola, your hand has been up for about 20 minutes. Yes. So I'd love to hear what you've got to ask.
I'm not really sure if it's a question. We'll see where it goes. But I think going back to what you said in the beginning about how this whole thing requires a paradigm shift for people in terms of how they record their lives. There's no mechanism at the moment to collect data about very human intelligence. There's the intelligence tied to economic activity, like likes, comments, and sharing posts. And that's what humans understand intelligence to be. That's where data collection mechanisms are pointed. We don't think of our instinctual behavior as intelligence. For that reason, we don't have any way to collect it. It feels like that might perpetuate the cycle of we create tools that can collect information about intelligence that relates to economic activity, but we don't pay attention to our intrinsic human behavior, so we don't create anything that relates to that. So the two remain completely separate all the time. And in my mind, I just can't even conceptualize merging the two to the point where
And they won't ever happen. So that's the challenge. That's when I said, when your wife or friend walks into a room and you say, what's wrong? They didn't walk in saying something's wrong, or a mother says something's wrong with my kid. How does that energy transmit? We can't record those things. And I think the people that I've spoken to worldwide who go into these categorical places think they're more brilliant than they are. They just believe that they can figure these things out. And then you ask them about their personal life. Oh, I've never been able to, or this doesn't happen, or that doesn't happen. You're like, you are so screwed up that listening to you would be one of the worst things I could ever do. We've all been in those experiences where we meet individuals like that. So the challenge becomes, do we ask ourselves questions about things we cannot even explain? For example, we don't know how we turn on. We're in a womb, there's a baby, whatever your beliefs are about the thing. Your cells get together, it's all energy. Energy combines, it forms into molecules. Those molecules create. One day we have no idea. You could be religious and say it's religious, but that doesn't describe it. It just gives you, it's a deflection. Why do we turn on? How do we turn on? We don't know that yet. We don't know how we turn off. Yes, but why didn't they turn off 5 minutes later? Why 5 minutes earlier? We don't know fundamental questions. And what we're trying to do is explain the unexplainable. I can't explain my wife. I cannot explain my wife. I will not try, because we will have number 6.
See, that's why there are never disagreements, David, because there's no point for you arguing with her, because she always wins. I've been in those situations. She explains to you how the world works and you go, yes. So yes, well,
because we are more intelligent than they are. Did I say that? Did she hear? So no, you're asking a great question, Nicola. How do we look at ththese things? And in the work that we're doing now, on the top level, it looks very confusing to some individuals, but on a basic level is this. You have to change both the systems and structure and the way we live, and and we have to change the humanistic side simultaneously to find new answers. And I can tell you, Nicola, how quickly I could change your life. You right now are sitting in a room. How many doors are there? I do my own carpet, plumbing, electrical work. I could show up, put some wall up, close your door, open up another door on the other side, and guess what? You're going to go out that other door. No doubt. You're not going to rip through the wall. I could change your life by changing the door. The question is that a positive or a negative? Many people who are designing these software applications think that they know humanity. I've got one guy right now that I'm talking to. He's a 40-year-old angry man. He's got 160, 170 IQ. He looks at people in a way that they can't keep up with him. He's angry and he's designing software because he believes he has the answer to make things better.
But the software is not going to be good, David. I know that. You can ask Graham as well. He also knows you can never write software when you're angry.
But humans today,
maybe it's the only way.
Humans, being frustrated is different than angry. But humans today are angry. They are extremely angry. They might be angry at their children. Why didn't they do that? Well, you were a bad parent. You didn't take the phone away when they were 9 because you thought they needed that. The kids are out in our yard now. My kids are a little bit older, and they left a ball on our yard. One of the parents was sitting on our yard, and my wife said something, and I said, "Isn't that great?" Now, most people in our neighborhood would be like, why are they sitting on my yard? The guy was laying down on our yard, on our front lawn. And you have to ask, we have to change societal beliefs. I've done 3 TEDx's. 2 of them have been put on TED. One is in Luxembourg. It talks, Nicola, about systems and structure and design. And I will give Madison a copy of Paid to Think in the digital version, PDF. So you could have it in EPUB or in Kindle version. I can send that too, but at least the PDF.
David, don't you have a custom GPT created for that? I'll make you an AI.
Please do. Actually, we are using in our software we're designing, it's going to have a fundamental part. It's a small book. It only took a little while to write. There's a lot in there. In this one piece on that Luxembourg presentation, Nicola, you'll never look at the world again the same. Because to change humans is not as complicated as you think. Just change the road where they travel. Just change a sign that they don't see. Just change the clothing that they wear. Walk out with different clothing tomorrow that you've never worn, and every one of your friends will treat you differently. Every one of your friends will. Why are you wearing something like that? That's too loud. That's not you. If
I was going to wear my gray shirt, and then I said, no, I was going to wear my short sleeve shirt just for you.
And I actually changed my shirt because I was going to be respectful of you. But that's a whole different story.
So,
Getting back to that question, And maybe some of you have answers to this, because I'm searching for them. I'm asking the question over 40 years, how do we reshape society? Because we're going to move forward. We are not going to go backwards. So stop saying we're not going to do this. And how do we, over the next 40 years, reshape society to have some of that interconnectedness, that entanglement, that infusion? Because when I look at you, Jessica, I see someone intense in trying to figure something out. That's what I see. That's what I feel. You're trying to say, where does this fit in my life? Am I wrong? And I see, Mark, see you, I feel you. The entire time you've been looking in different directions saying, I'm not sure. These are some personal things that David is touching on. They're part of it you're feeling, but you're also saying, how do I change some of the behaviors that I have and the decisions I'm making and the work that I'm doing? And you're struggling with it because you have some things that are very fundamentally challenged in the way you want to move forward in your life. Am I fairly right with what I've said? How do we, as individuals who are on this call, trying to figure out how to create, if you know Jay, you're looking for something different. How do we do that? Does anybody have any answers?
David, let Graham quickly do.
I've got a couple of observations. The first thing is, you were saying, why are people going down the rabbit holes, providing information to the engines? Well, because we've been trained. We've been trained by the vendors, by the social media networks and all the rest of it. They sell attention, they sell clicks, they sell data about us, and they've trained us very well to do those things. Another observation is that humans forget, and maybe that's inherent, and in fact, a lot of our mental processing in terms of how we compute is forgetting. And out of that, we distill what's meaningful, what's useful, etc. If you think about all the bandwidth of stuff we consume or exposed to on a daily basis, if we tried to store all of that accurately, digitally, the brain would be full within the first 3 months of life or something. A lot of how we operate is forgetting. And maybe we need to start building some of that into our computational tools, that they also forget stuff and only remember what's useful, important, etc.
Yes, the cold
But
starts.
then,
And the anti-recommenders is like a big interest. I love it. And exactly that humans are
And then,
intelligent because we can selectively forget the things we want to forget. AI can't.
Correct. And then a third kind of observation to David's question in terms of how do we start changing the behavior and get the information that you want, the more detailed, more nuanced, additional facets and so on. Well, I spend a lot of my life staying private, as in not sharing stuff online because of how it gets exploited. And the reason, that people will share more is when they trust more and when there are benefits to sharing. So you have to turn the equation around. At the moment, whatever you share gets exploited for the benefit of the network, the vendor, the platform, the advertiser. It is not beneficial to the person who is sharing it. We've got to turn that equation around and say, how do we provide real benefits to the people for sharing? That could come in the form of, because the algorithm has detected that you're really interested in this topic, maybe it serendipitously finds and sends you some new research on that topic. Or it finds that, you like to take photographs of landscapes. Maybe it sends you a link that says, I just came across these fantastic landscapes that have been posted online. If the feedback is enrichment, you're then encouraged to say, wow, I shared this information and look what I got. I got, real valuable, interesting input back, and I didn't get abused. Right? Then you're going to have people sharing a lot more and a lot more willingly. But you've got to turn that value equation around.
For David's context, Graham has got a deep understanding of hyperdimensional networks. And actually, his business is to design an architectural representation, or essentially an abstract representation of real world scenarios. So that means if I want to figure out if a company is going in the right direction, who the people are, where they fit, what they're going to be doing, what technology are applying, and bringing all of those dimensions together and then making sense of it, is what Graham does. That's his business. He's got even more tooling for that. So that's why
the comments you're making were very good. And the forgetting side of it is a very difficult one to argue. If you've been in a relationship, one person remembers something, the other doesn't. That's where the fight stops. And I'm always the one who's wrong. But I didn't say that out loud.
You can
Yeah, that's
also
an
both remember it differently. That's even more
Well,
interesting.
we don't know how to weight our own importance of what means something to us. 5 years from now, we'll get on a call and someone will say, remember when we met at such and such? And you're going, no, we met a week earlier. No, we put importance on things that we might not. So I think it was great. But I think Jessica had her hand up. Did you unhand yourself?
I did unhand myself. I'm just cognizant of time. That's all. I mean, I guess this is not necessarily an answer to the question that you were asking, but more an interesting insight. And it's quite a niche application. I don't know if you know of Mariano Sigman. So he was a neuroscientist who got into machine learning and crafted a clinical study in which he tracked over the course of 2.5 years 35 or 37 at-risk youths for schizophrenia, and figured out a way to identify the onset of schizophrenia before the break. And from that, they were able to identify 5 of those individuals that ended up heading towards a schizophrenic break and facilitating the steps prior to that so that they didn't have the break and rather managed to ride the wave and handle the disease after the fact. There's a 50% chance that you'll develop it. But the idea has always stuck with me to sort of, I guess, from a very psychological perspective, be able to identify without the human biases and all the textbook narratives around what's considered to be, I don't know, bipolar or even ADHD or schizophrenia, or a lot of these things that are thrown around sort of willy-nilly, and being able to use something that is a lot more accurate in identifying subtle fluctuations and changes in human behavior. And to say that, you know, I get an answer to how it could be used to better a situation and better people.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to get my mind around it, but this is what goes through my mind when I hear these things. You know, we believe that the Earth was the center of the universe, and Copernicus and all the others reshaped all of that, and someone said it was wrong. We believe that energy flew a certain way, and then we found out it was wrong. The challenge I have with a lot of papers, and I know that many of you probably read a lot of them, is they're often very wrong years later, very wrong, because that individual is focused on something that they didn't see. So let me give you a quick test. How many of you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I'm assuming all of you do. How many know that he wrote a paper and it didn't do well, except one person in America found the paper and created the triangle? He did not write the triangle. It was an American who then went out and sold it as a premise that you first have to get your needs met, then you go to the next level, then you go to the next level, and finally you become self-actualized. So then there's a question here. Does it mean that you have to have all this accumulation and all your needs met to be self-actualized? Have you met a poor person who's probably more in tune with themselves and everything that you know in your life, and they are good people? Have you met those people? Yes. So the model falls apart within 1 second. If you're religious, you could say Jesus and Moses. Those are people that were self-actualized, but they might not have had any money. Well, he wrote a paper before he died that almost no one has read that said, I didn't believe in the model. He basically did it for financial reasons. So everybody who's quoting Maslow's hierarchy doesn't understand that being a good person has nothing to do with the fact that you have food, water, and shelter. It has to do with how you act and behave. So when I hear papers, it's a challenging thing because I do read a lot, but I'm always asking that question behind. When will they find out this is wrong? Like, when are we going to realize that that doesn't really connect the way the world works? And where does this person come from? So that model that you just shared sounded very interesting, but this person might have studied psychological behavioral challenges their whole life because they hated their father. And then they were looking for a cause to say, I did something. Well, mothers and fathers do have a big influence on us. So how do we stop that trend of writing papers for the purposes of getting more funding? I mean, you can't stay at a university if you're not writing a paper. So you're going to find something to write a paper on, even if it's not as real. And that person picked something that's probably screwed up in their own lives. But then Copernicus said, we're not the only one, the universe spins a different way. I believe most of the things we're perceiving about humanity over the past 50 years were individuals trying to define humanity. And yet we've all defined humanity already here.
That's why one of my favorite academics is Sumantra Ghoshal. In his early life, he spent a lot of time trying to understand organizational culture. And then he wrote a paper that was rejected by all journals and only ever published after his death. And it's called Towards a Better Theory of Management. And he wrote a scathing critique on MBAs and business schools and education. He analyzed during the financial crisis why General Motors, that still today is the world's biggest failure that in modern world has ever seen, is still government owned. And during that period, he then went and cataloged all the companies that failed and the ones who didn't. And then he went and found out where all the executives went to university. And mapped it back to the case studies he used to teach their business theory. The fascinating outcome, that's not a surprise, is the reason why those companies failed is because they all send their people to the same place. And they use the same case for the same reasoning, where in Europe and in Japan at the time, if you look at what happened with Toyota during the crisis, was some of its most successful financial years in its history, because it did the opposite. And that meant that you then had Henry Mintzberg and Sumatra Ghoshal and this kind of anti-management movement against the Porters of the world, because Porter said that everything is a finite model. That's why I quite like what Jess is saying and why we are interested in that even as a business. The populist belief of a certain theoretical framework means that it is not successful. Doing something that you know is relevant to the situation is what, and that's why if I look at, remember one of the pieces of work,
3 standard deviations out. Look for 500 people to comment and you get one person on the edge. That's the one you want to talk to.
Yeah. And that's what happened. So you know that the paper only got published after his death. They published a book with it, like, papers that he never published, and you realize that he was quite a revolutionary. He was the one at the World Economic Forum.
Being dead is a good thing. People can then compliment.
Your best work is only going to come out after we're gone.
So that was the conversation we had yesterday. We had a pretty interesting conversation yesterday about United States and Europe. And I talked with my wife on our walk. One of the philosophies was America has, Jay's very big in banking. I don't know, you have to have some type of genetic flaw to be that interested in it, but we won't go there. He was talking about the American system and incentivization, and then there was the debt and the way America builds. Yet at the same time, we don't learn anything growing up. I didn't have one day in my entire life where my family taught finance. I never learned it in school. Both Madison and Jay did. But in America, people are willing to put a risk. They'll put $10 down on a company to say, I believe this will work. And when you hear people in Germany, they say, oh, no one's ever going to finance that. I'm never going to get that done. So that risk variable of being able to take debt, I grew up, you go to school, you get a loan out. You want to get a home, you get a loan out. It wasn't taught that you like debt. It was that's how it's done. But in America, look at the number of companies that have spawned out of, if I fail, I fall hard. There's no safety net. There's nothing behind us. You lose your home, you lose your life, you lose your friends. And we work our butts off for it. I don't know if that's good or bad. We all have so many assumptions about society and culture and what's good and what's bad that it's really difficult unless you've been around the world. I think Japan is an amazing culture. However, one of my best friends from Japan, her sister's husband committed suicide, and her sister's daughter committed suicide. Well, that's not a good society if people look at the world that way. I can go around the world and pick somebody who lives in Kazakhstan or Pakistan or whatever, and they look at the world very differently. I don't think we have answers. I think we have too many questions and not an approach to just slow down and say, what are we solving for? And we don't do that. The words are strategy and tactics. We all use them. If I went over it, you'll all give definitions of them. But you never start with strategy, but we always start with strategy. You should always start with desired outcome, not what's the strategy, what's the plan, what are we doing? Ask yourself, what is our desired outcome? And 9 times out of 10, if you ask that first, you will not come up with the answers that you might even say, forget it, it's not worth it, because that's not what we're trying to achieve. So I don't know how to ask those. I'm working on trying to figure that out. So I appreciate that question.
But David, you know what makes it complicated? And that's the thing that I always ask my clients that listen to this, because it's a good story. David and I have discussed this before. People always debate what comes first, strategy or structure. The unfortunate thing is, and this is the way that the economic system is developed, is that structure always comes first. You first create a role for the head of strategy. Then you appoint a person in that role that you've selected. And you then ask him to do exactly what you want him to do. And that's why the world that deals with uncertainty, the startup world, the world of of not knowing what the outcome is going to be, where success lies, is the thing that creates growth. And I think that's what you were saying earlier about economic systems, that growth happens because in the face of adversity, in the face of confusing situations, in the face of not knowing exactly what the answer is, greatness emerges. Not from something where you know, this is the formula, just go do it, execute it, and I'll test you at the end that you've done it.
For all of you, I appreciate being asked to be on this. I think there's big questions, and any of you who would like to talk afterwards, I always like meeting interesting and new people to find out what makes them tick. If you're on this call, you probably have a similar, I'm going to say DNA. You're looking to transform tomorrow into something better. We are looking for talent like you. We're like no other organization ever built. Did you get a chance?
No, not yet.
There's a lot there, and we're looking for amazing individuals who can help us move things forward. We're a nonprofit, for-profit. KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, and EY have evaluated us. We've had people all over the world helping us in everything from new materials to platforms to autonomous robotics for mining. You name it, we're working on it. Would love to meet any one of you. If you reach out to me, I will have a call with you.
Thank you